Why does solving quadratic equations often feel like a puzzle wrapped in an enigma? Is it the sheer complexity or the intimidating algebraic expressions? Maybe or maybe not. But today we're going to demystify this mathematical challenge and break it down into bite-sized pieces. Welcome to the world of quadratic equations, where x always has a place and numbers dance in squares and roots. Today we'll be focusing on a method called completing the square. It's a technique that can feel a bit tricky at first, but with time, it becomes a valuable tool in your mathematical toolkit. So what's our first step? We start with a standard quadratic equation, which looks something like this: ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Now, it's essential to remember that a must always be equal to 1 for this method to work. If it's not, don't worry, just divide the whole equation by a, and it will be. The second step involves a little bit of magic, a dash of imagination. Imagine a perfect square trinomial. This is a trinomial that can be factored into two identical binomials. To create this perfect square trinomial, we need to find a number that, when added to our quadratic equation, transforms it into this perfect square. Output. All right, how do we find this magical number? It's simpler than it sounds. We take the coefficient of our x term, divide it by 2, and then square the result. That's it. This number, when added and subtracted inside our equation, creates the perfect square trinomial we're after. But we're not done yet. The next step is to rewrite our equation. We now have a perfect square trinomial on one side and a constant on the other. Our equation is starting to look a lot simpler, isn't it? The final step involves solving for x. Since we have a perfect square on one side, we can take the square root of both sides of the equation. Remember to consider both the positive and negative roots. Once we've done that, we just need to isolate x to find our solutions. And voila, we've completed the square. To summarize, there are 5 key steps in completing the square. 1. Make sure a equals 1. 1. Imagine a perfect square trinomial. 1. Find the number that transforms our equation into a perfect square trinomial. 1. Rewrite the equation with the perfect square trinomial on one side and a constant on the other. 1. Solve for x by taking the square root of both sides and isolating x. Completing the square might seem like a daunting task, but remember, every complex problem can be broken down into simpler steps. With practice and patience, you'll be solving quadratic equations with ease. So go ahead, dive into the world of quadratic equations and make x your best friend.